Good morning. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen, November 18, 2013, 8:30 a.m. First order of business is public forum, limited to 3 minutes of any agenda item. Anybody like to speak? Okay, next item, minutes of October 21st, regular meeting. That was tabled.
We needed proper language for the land transaction that we had.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah.
I'll move. So, what do you want to move to?
Yeah, I'll move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The minutes of the November 4th meeting, regular meeting.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Tracy, I wasn't here.
Sheila?
Morning.
Good morning. Okay, so we have our financial reports through the end of October. And I have expenditures in front of me, but we'll still start with revenue as usual. We've collected 52.67% of our revenue budget at the end of October, compared to 52.69% at the end of last October. Exactly, basically the same as where we were. Tax collections are strong at 53.1% compared to 53.28% last year. Mostly all the departments are strong. Youth and family, we fixed the formula error, and actually that looks good now. At 43% they've collected. And we checked that, that's correct. Park and Rec, all the revenue that wasn't recorded is now recorded. They're at 28.65 compared to 30.6, still pretty much right on. And the only department, I hate saying this year after year, that's down is finance for the interest income, and that's basically due not just to the rates, but to the fact that we've been financing the high school project prior to the notes being issued. So not only the rates are lower, as our cash is lower than usual. Other than that, revenue looks good.
Any questions on revenue?
No.
I would only make one comment. It drives Lynn crazy, but I wish Youth and Family Services revenues weren't up, because that's a bad sign. I mean,
I know.
those are services we wish the town didn't have to provide.
Okay. Expenditures. Expenditures were at 46.3% compared to 44.9%. It's a little bit more of a spread than usual, and so what I did is I took out of the mix capital and debt service, because those are scheduled, well, the debt service are scheduled and what we will expend on 100% of our budget. And capital we're going to expend anyway, it's just timing issues. So if you take those two areas out of the equation here, we're at 42.8% this year compared to 44.9% last year. So that's all the other departments. So we are in good shape. That just further illustrates that point. There's really nothing here that's unusual.
Any questions on expenditures?
No.
Okay.
We'll take a look at medical. Medical, we now have two individuals who have exceeded 50% of the stop loss. So that's starting to grow, and let me just...
Sheila, I forget. The stop loss is how much?
Stop loss is $225,000.
We changed that, right?
Yeah.
It used to be lower, now it's a little bit higher.
It used to be 175.
Yeah, that's what I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
170, now it's 225?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we will probably look into, it's very expensive.
Yeah.
So, you know, we always look into whether or not kind of a cost-benefit analysis on the cost of the premium versus how much we actually save. We will do that during the budget process. Okay, let me see if I can, Gary, I may have to share with you if I can't.
And we have not yet. We're waiting for the audit to allocate the surplus from last year?
Yes.
What'd you say, Darren? I'm sorry. repeat
We're
that.
waiting for the audit to determine what the surplus was for last year, because some of it may be allocated into this,
Okay,
into this
yeah.
account.
Well, we pretty much, we're waiting for the official.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand, you know what it is, but
Yeah.
we're waiting for the official audit.
Okay, so medical, it's, October was pretty much consistent with September, 891,000, September was 869, so it's clearly, it's helping our average, but still the annualized average projects a $412,000 deficit. It's getting better though,
Yeah.
so, we just,
But it always seems like we start like that because the summer the claims go up.
yeah, that's what
because
I
of-
think too.
yeah.
It's, you never really get that official answer from Anthem, but that's,
Yeah.
I think it has to be that.
In January, sometimes they spike.
Well, I think it's the
Some
nature
people-
of the municipality. I mean, most of our employees are off during the summer, the school system.
Correct.
Exactly.
So they take care of those things when they should be.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or over the holidays like
Yeah.
January, yeah.
Yeah.
December, January, yeah.
So that's really all that I have.
Any questions on medical?
Nope.
Now, I also have an item for continued enforce. Is that a separate agenda item?
Yes. But it's next, so.
Okay.
Jill, one thing before we move on, on the golf course,
Yes.
what was the $30,000 transfer, the operating transfer in June last year, do you remember?
Yeah, that's, was part of our general fund budget, that we budgeted a line item to subsidize the golf course.
Okay.
So we just transfer the lump sum amount. Okay, so we haven't had a continued enforce request for many years. And that's because the departments usually have at least committed to a vendor for a project for that particular budget year. So we could encumber the funds, even if they haven't actually spent the money yet. This year, we had 2 projects that we did not choose a vendor for. So the auditors did not really suggest that I encumber without a vendor. So that's fine. So that means we have to do continued enforce. It's just an appropriation that we're continuing to this fiscal year, and then that will allow us to encumber the funds this year under continued enforce. So there's, the 2 items are a 6-wheel dump truck from Engineering Public Works, plow, sander, for $70,000. And the HVAC system study, that's a continuing project at the police department.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that.
We did.
Not that there's a problem, but is it going on just because they're just being thorough, or they're just, I mean, not that it's not important, or they're just taking their time, I mean, there's no problem.
They're not taking their time. There's
Oh.
been some procedural issues and other issues that I
We
think.
talked about that at
Yeah.
the capital
Capital plan.
meeting the other day.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it's under control, but it's taking longer than.
It's taking far too long.
Okay.
But
It is one of those situations where the life of the system is not at the end of its
Yeah.
lifespan, but it's not critical. It's not breaking down
Okay,
today, right
so-
now, so they're dotting their i's and crossing their t's.
Okay, that's
but
good
it's
then.
2050, yeah.
That's good.
And we approved the dump truck for Public Works
Right.
a meeting or 2 ago, right?
Yeah, I remember that one.
Okay.
Okay.
So what do
So
we
is
need
there
to
a
do?
total amount here that we have to?
Right, so the amount is $117,926 that basically you're going to, if you approve it today, recommend it to the Board of Finance to approve.
Do we have a motion?
I would move that we continue enforce the 2 items totaling $117,926.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Questions? Okay. That's that.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. Thank you. Next item, Mr. Portley. Discuss and take possible action to set a public hearing date of December 16, 2013, 8 a.m. Please note the time at Guilford Town Hall to receive public comment on the Vineyard Point Bridge project over the abandoned trolley line.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We've, I guess about a month ago, we approved the commitment to fund that was issued by the state for the fund, the grant. We've processed the supplemental application. And we've got to the point where we need to have this public hearing to get public input to finalize the supplemental application. Pretty straightforward.
Have you had any inquiries or discussions from neighbors, that type of thing?
Back in the spring, we met with their 4 abutting property owners, had a very good discussions. We did consult with them in terms of the size of the culvert that they would like to see put in there so that people could still travel the old trolley right away. Several property owners use it for maintenance of their properties and so forth. So we haven't had the final determination on that, and this is our chance to do that.
So we gotta get notice out to neighborhoods and that type of
Public hearing, we
thing.
will send.
I've had some discussions with Tracy regarding the new notification system and perhaps using that for some of these public hearings, so we'll try to see if that'll work on this one. It'll be a little test.
Okay.
But, you know,
We still
do
follow.
everything you can to let the neighbors and people down there know what's going on.
Well,
okay?
by statute, I think we have to send them all registered letters if they're abutting property owners, so.
Great, appreciate it.
Put up a sign there?
No, we don't do that.
I move that we set December 16th at 8 a.m. at the town hall to receive public comment on the Vineyard Point Road Bridge project over the abandoned trolley line.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. George? No, George, this way.
I'll stop over.
I thought you were trying to leave.
I think we put on the other road.
Okay, receive presentation regarding a community coastal resiliency plan.
Good morning, everyone.
morning.
Hello, George.
I'm here on behalf of the Coastal Resilience Plan Study Group. Several of our other members are here. I'd like to introduce them. Nathan Froling from the Nature Conservancy, John Henningsen, who I think most of you know, is chairman of the Natural Hazard Mitigation Commission, and M.J. Kessner, who's co-chair of the Plan of Conservation and Development Study Committee. They're also, all 3 of those folks are part of the project team that prepared the Town of Guilford Community Coastal Resilience Plan, which looks like this in paper copy. There is a paper copy of this document available in the Selectman's office, also at the library and in Town Hall South, and it is also available on the town's website for any members of the board who'd like to look at it and or members of the public. So I encourage people to take a look at it. There's also an excellent article describing the plan and the planning process in CT Mirror, if any of you look at that. I think 2 weeks ago, they did an extensive review of Guilford's coastal planning project, and it's, I think, worth reading. The purpose of our being here this morning is to officially, if there is such a process, transmit this plan to you, and also urge the Board of Selectmen, jointly with the Planning and Zoning Commission, we believe, to hold a public hearing probably in January, the date uncertain, to consider approving this plan as part of the Plan of Conservation and Development. As you know, the Board of Selectmen and the Planning and Zoning Commission both have to take that action in order for any plan to become part of the town's plan, and that's the course of action that we're hoping that the Board of Selectmen and the Planning and Zoning Commission will pursue. So with your permission, I'll work with Tracy and your other staff and also with Planning and Zoning staff to try to find a date that would be appropriate in January for a public hearing to consider this. Perhaps, I believe it would be in the evening. Perhaps we would take one of the regular Planning and Zoning Commission dates, maybe their second meeting in January, and use that as an opportunity for this, but the date remains to be seen. But our hope is, most importantly, that both the Board of Selectmen and the Planning and Zoning Commission will ultimately approve this and make this part of our plan. Also, as my memo to you describes, the November 18th memo, we would like for this document, the plan, the Coastal Resilience Plan, to become part of the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. The purpose and the reason for doing that is twofold. One, it enables funding sources who would be funding projects related to coastal resilience and natural hazard mitigation to consider it. If it is part of the natural hazard mitigation plan, the projects that are identified in this plan, those projects which are also consistent with the natural hazard mitigation plan, become candidates for funding under the FEMA funding programs. And as I think you know, and as we anticipate, there will be significant federal funding available over the next year, several years, for coastal resilience and natural hazard mitigation projects. So it's very important, in order that projects that are candidates be part of this natural hazard mitigation planning process. As the board knows, you've created a commission by ordinance to implement the natural hazard mitigation plan, which hopefully this would become part of, and that enables all of the projects that are described to become candidates potentially for funding. Also, in doing that, we believe that the Natural Hazard Mitigation Commission would then become responsible for prioritizing the projects that are, the many projects that are identified both in the hazard mitigation plan and also in this plan, in order to make a rational allocation of local government resources. As you probably know, if you've looked at both of these documents, there are multiple steps, activities, capital projects, regulatory projects, land acquisition, many other types of projects that are identified, and it will be important that we create a system of prioritizing which ones are most important for us. That prioritization pursuant to this approach would be the responsibility of the Hazard Mitigation Commission, and then making recommendations to the Board of Selectmen about which projects to pursue. One of the things that will, of course, affect, I believe, their process in prioritizing, and again, going back to my first point, availability of funds. There are going to be, we believe, significant funds available, and this puts us in an excellent place to pursue those funds. Just by way of an example, just a month ago or so, Department of Interior announced major funding for coastal resilience projects in areas affected by Sandy, and we're already working on that. That would be a project that would fund potentially green infrastructure. One of the major projects that's recommended in the hazard mitigation plan includes development of green infrastructure to protect the West River area, the mouth of the West River, from the extensive erosion that's been occurring there, and also potentially the East River area as well. We believe we have an excellent chance to pursue those funds, and we're going to try to do that with your support and permission. John Henningsen is here. He's been working on that project for some time, and he's going to continue to work with us, and hopefully we're going to put together a grant application that will be that will be successful in that area. Just like to identify just quickly a couple of the other key things that are recommended in this plan, some of the steps that we think should be pursued, and these things illustrate, I think, the broad range of types of projects that are identified in the CR plan. We would like to initiate a comprehensive state and local planning process, including the town of Brantford potentially, to address 140 through 146. This really is a joint roadway facility serving both towns. It is subject to significant impacts from coastal flooding and sea level rise, and we believe a project that is multi-town would be very successful. It's the type of thing that we think should be pursued. The plan also recommends new zoning and other regulatory programs to address coastal resiliency, including potentially freeboard standards, meaning requirements for building elevations higher than the FEMA standards. That would be something that could be pursued through the zoning code. As you might see when you read the plan, 2 neighborhoods are described as potential projects, what we've called zones of shared risk in Guilford, that could be subject to more detailed neighborhood-based coastal resilience planning projects that would involve significantly the property owners in those neighborhoods. Both Soundview Road and Seaside Avenue are candidates for that. Both there are areas that are subject to, are very vulnerable, subject to increasing storms and sea level rise. We'd like to pursue at least 1 protective infrastructure project and 1 green infrastructure project in the short term. Maybe the project that I just mentioned that we're looking at the Department of Interior funding to support. The plan identifies land acquisition, especially areas that might be suitable for tidal marsh advancement. One of the things that is happening with sea level rise is that tidal marshes are being lost. We see that in our own case quite readily. And one of the things we'd like to provide for, and that the plan recommends that we provide for, and that is provide places where tidal marshes can migrate or advance inland as sea level rise occurs. There are also areas that are potentially vulnerable from storms and sea level rise with regard to the sewage disposal systems, individual residences, as well as areas that could benefit from water supply improvements. So all of these are the types of projects that are described in this plan. There are many more. There are many projects also listed in the hazard mitigation plan, which we believe deserve our attention. It's a very challenging thing for us, and we're looking forward to working with the Board of Selectmen, the Hazard Mitigation Commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, and others to move this all forward. So again, I recommend to you the document. I'd be happy to make paper copies for anybody who wants them. And also, please take a look at the town's website if you want to look at it further. And hopefully we'll have a public hearing in January to consider all this.
Okay, George, I want to thank you because I know it's a lot of work to get to this point. You plan on having discussions with P&Z in December?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and hopefully the public hearing in January.
And setting the public hearing in January.
Right.
So, you know, keep track of that with Tracy.
Right.
In your memo of November 18th, you list the study group. And it's a fairly impressive group of experts. And I'm glad you noted in your initiatives up here, neighborhood-based, because it's very important that it seems to me there's nobody from any of the neighborhoods that would be directly affected in this study group. So we want to make sure, like I was saying to Jim earlier at the other public hearing, that they are involved in that January public hearing, because it's going to be a lot easier to have the neighborhoods aboard in the planning stage. So again, when we're setting that date, you know, maybe Tracy can use the new notification system and maybe put in your thinking a little additional publicity or an article or something like that, because getting the neighborhoods aboard earlier is just going to be so much easier.
Absolutely.
That's what I says, why didn't you have any neighborhood folks on here? Just,
well, actually,
I know we went through that with the hazard mitigation issue as well.
Actually, John Henningsen is a resident of Sachems Head.
I know, but
Nathan Froling is also a resident of Mulberry Point. But it's a good thought. Absolutely. We have an extensive mailing list, email list of neighborhood residents and neighborhood associations that we have been working with.
Let's just be proactive about it. I mean,
absolutely.
We've learned our lesson through enough other issues that, you know.
because you know what happens, people don't pay attention until the actual document comes out,
Right.
and then sometimes, and then, you know, and I know the big question is going to be, you know, you have standards, we have federal standards, we have state. Why do we need to go beyond that? That's going to be the big issue.
Sure.
And
Just
you
have
know.
one set of public hearings this time, is what it comes down to,
Right.
right? Any other comments?
Just a question, George. On 146, you talked about including Branford. That's a state highway.
Yes.
What participation does the state have in this?
They
or
would-
DOT or whatever?
They would have to be a major player, obviously. That's
And,
I think-
you mentioned Brantford perhaps too.
Yes.
This makes it.
Right.
Okay, what do you need from us? Do you need a motion or just
No,
go ahead?
no, I just wanted
Okay.
to make you aware of all this, make the public aware. speaking of neighborhood residents, we do have several, a couple neighborhood residents who are here today. I don't know why they're here, but maybe it's for
That's
this
good.
purpose.
That's great. That means that they want to see
Are you
And in
guys,
talking-
going on.
have you been following this project?
From day one.
All right.
And in talking to those ones that are present today, it was also noted that in talking to their neighbors, knew nothing about it. So, you know.
We'll do the best
We
we
know
can.
what we have to do.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, George, and thank you to the
Thanks,
committee.
Okay, item
Oh, I
6.
forgot. Kevin came in late. He's also on the project team, and he also lives in Station Center.
Good. Discuss and take possible action to authorize Selectman Charles Haverda, in the absence of First Selectman, to award bid number 23-1314, diesel fuel number 2, heating fuel oil, and unleaded gasoline after bids are received at 9:30 a.m. on November 20th, 2013. This is like an annual
Yeah, we did this.
thing,
Yes.
Pam.
Good morning.
Oh, I was going to make the motion.
Good.
Well, let's
I
get
mean,
the-
we all know it's a,
Yes.
all right,
Do you
Pam.
have numbers or?
No, no
No,
numbers.
this
They
is the
get 'em
bid
that morning.
process.
So we get them that morning and we have an hour to act and.
Right.
And,
Just explain for the camera what
sorry.
that
yes,
means.
so every year we go out to bid for diesel, heating fuel, and unleaded gasoline for the Board of Ed as well as the town. The bids are going to be received on Wednesday. We have an hour window because of volatility of the market to award these bids. So at that time, Acting First Selectman Haverda and a representative of the Board of Ed will consider the bids, as well as Sheila, and they'll make a decision about what to award. And that's it.
And this is for fiscal year 14-15?
It is. We are currently in a contract that expires on 6/30/2014. And also, every year we get estimates of gallons from both finance as well as the Board of Ed of what we need, and those have continually been modified because we're switching over to natural gas in several locations. So that's a good sign,
Yeah.
moving in the right direction. And it also takes into account the next fiscal year, the fact that the high school, the new high school, I understand they're going to have a generator which will be tested in that fiscal year, so they will be fueling up that generator as well. So that's also taken into account.
Then I'll move we authorize Acting Selectman Charles Haverda to award bid number 23-1314, diesel fuel number 2, heating fuel oil and unleaded gasoline after bids are received at 9:30 a.m. on November 20th, 2013.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just asked, can you notify us after the bids, or if we award the bids, can you notify us what the numbers are?
Yes, absolutely, like we did last
Last
year
year,
with all the
yeah.
phone calls. Yep.
Okay, number 7.1, act on resignation received from Peter Golitz from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. If we don't accept this, does that mean he can't serve as on the Board of Finance?
I think you can serve on both, can't you? The only one you
No.
can't
No,
do
you
is the board.
can't.
Oh,
You're
it can't be
elected.
any
Yes.
like that. I thought it was just the Board of Selectmen.
7.2, act on a resignation received from John Island from the Energy Task Force.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
With regrets, yeah.
With regrets, and
We
Yeah,
really,
again, this is the second meeting in a row we've had a resignation from the Energy Task Force, and anybody with requisite skills that wants to volunteer would be
Really neat.
very, very welcome and needed.
Can Tracy put something on the website, like a special? Okay.
okay, 8.1,
I would move that we approve the 2 uses of town property for display in a community fund, a menorah display in a community fund sign on the green
Second.
for the dates as specified.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, any correspondence? Any old business?
Only that this Thursday, November 21st, is a major fundraiser for Guilford 375. It's at the Guilford Yacht Club. Tickets are still available. We have over 60 silent auction items and over 10 live auction items. Really great, fabulous prizes, as well as turkey raffles for the upcoming holidays. So it's going to be a big event, and it's a lot of fun. And I would urge people, if you're so inclined, come and support Guilford's 375. all proceeds go toward the activities.
Veronica, can people get tickets at the door?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Okay.
Just a couple of
But,
things.
excuse me, if you are coming, we'd like to know ahead of time, just so
Yeah.
you can pay at the door, but we'd like to know ahead of time. Either email me or go through the website.
I was at the high school building committee meeting, and just a quick update. They are in the process, as people may have read, the bids came in successfully. There is some there's a significant amount of money that has been saved on the base bid, and so they're considering a whole bunch of alternatives, and people are coming and making presentations. They're looking at the cost benefit of various options, many of which were discarded during the planning process, and so may come back, but they're doing a very thorough process of vetting some of the alternatives that are available to upgrade the school from what the base plan was. The second thing, and I missed the meeting last week, in which you discussed the sidewalks, and I don't have a question specifically about the sidewalks, but I know we've talked from time to time about what our infrastructure needs are, our road needs are. Jim was here talking about a bridge which we end up paying 54% of, and I know when he made the initial presentation there's a couple of other bridges. I think it would be prudent to get a real plan process, not the budget process that we're going through, but a long-term planning process for what the town really needs for infrastructure, because while I understand the issues for sidewalks or all of these, I'd like to have an idea of the scope. I mean, if we're talking about millions or tens of millions of dollars to upgrade our infrastructure.
That was one of the requests at the Capitol meeting, that, both the bridges and the sidewalks, and I think the next step is the rest, and buildings. I mean, just to get a general list, and nothing, cast in stone, but just a feel for where we have potential and prioritize and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Gary, you also attended the Post Road West Committee. We were talking about public hearings and that type of thing. Did you want to comment on that? Encourage people to attend. Do you know when the next meeting is?
Yeah, we meet
No, I
bi-monthly.
don't. I mean, I'm sure it's on the website. I had to leave early because I went to the high school building committee meeting.
We've all been
It was one of those 3 meeting nights, but there were a lot of area people attending. I think there was a lot of discussion and a lot of issues raised about who was on the committee, who should be on the committee, and
Well, just encourage people to attend. The dates and times will be on the website, and
Tuesday the 26th is
Yeah.
the next one.
Tuesday the 26th is the
They
next
meet bi-monthly,
meeting.
don't they? Twice a month. Yeah, they meet
every other
the
Tuesday,
2nd and the 4th, right?
second and fourth Tuesday.
Yeah.
There's a lot of potential, a lot of changes happening on that end of town, and I really encourage everyone to be involved at this stage so that there are no surprises, and things are happening, so this is the time to be involved. So what was the date again, the 26th?
26th.
Great. At what time?
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
here.
6 p.m. here in Town Hall.
This is
No.
No, it's at Community Center.
Oh, they are
Excuse
meeting
me,
the community okay.
Center.
And this is specifically for Route 1 West. A lot of people are, and I was speaking to Tony Fabiano, who's chairman of the committee, and a lot of people are going because they think that this committee has the authority. This is merely an advisory committee, and what their recommendations will then be brought back to the full Planning and
Absolutely.
Zoning Committee. So I just don't want people to think that there's
There's nothing specific on the table at this point in time.
No.
This is the time to be involved. This is very early stages of planning, and it's a lot easier to adapt to new input at this stage than as things are developed.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on old or new business? Okay, public forum, 3 minutes, okay, that's it.
Move we adjourn?
No, Sid.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Sid. My apologies.
You know it's not a good day when I darken your door.
Oh,
That's
That's not
good
true.
at all.
Yes, it is.
well, wait, let's see what he says.
Yeah, let's go.
Good move. I'm here to speak to the issue of the resilience plan that was brought before you this morning. And in this memo, I have proposed 3 items for your consideration as you approach the public meeting. Number 1, I have requested on 5 occasions over the past 2 years that a detailed estimate of the values at risk on the shoreline be compiled so that town government and the public have a clear idea of what's at stake over the long term. And that long term is critical because although in many ways it seems distant to a lot of people, the things that we'll need to do to address it, we need to be considering today. Because the issue of resiliency on the shoreline and climate change and other areas that affect the town has a lot of moving parts, and it's a complex issue that needs to be understood. To date, that request has not been honored for reasons that are not clear to me. But I would urge you before the public meeting to assure that the project team does do an analysis of a type as I've suggested, so that the public and the boards have a clear idea of what we're talking about.
Well, clear monetary idea of what's
Clear
involved.
monetary idea, but
I think once that number is known, it puts things in perspective.
that's the intent,
Yeah.
yes. Because without that number, which kind of gives a holistic frame to the report, people
But
don't-
you're talking more about the damage that can be caused versus the cost.
I'm talking about
of-
tax base that will be lost
Yeah.
and potential impacts to the town's operating and capital budgets over time.
Well, you're assuming they don't rebuild.
In some cases, that will be the case, but in other cases, you'll lose value for a variety of reasons, even for properties that will not be subject to inundation. And that's the point. There's more texture to this than the $15 million potential tax loss that's reflected on page 1 of the report. That number needs to be understood in clearer terms than it suggests. So that's item number 1. Item number 2, I would strongly urge that you invite the Board of Finance to be a party to this meeting. I recall that in 2008, former First Selectman Ballas Tracy convened a workshop of the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen as we were approaching the prospect of the high school and its funding requirements. And that was a good move at that time for that purpose. I would suggest that the potential financial impacts to the town of this issue dwarf the issue of the high school, and it requires that the Board of Finance be as much on board with this issue as it moves forward from here as the other 2 boards. And finally, I would urge you to be sure that this is videoed and broadcast on GCTV. I'd requested this in the prior 3 meetings that were conducted for the public in the course of this project. It was not done in any case. As some of you know, the meetings were not widely attended. Broadcasting this and having it archived will be a valuable public information resource. The public needs to know, not merely the public on the directly affected shoreline properties and neighborhoods, but the total public up to North Guilford, because we're all going to be bearing a piece of this over time. It hits the town budget, it hits the town tax base. The whole town needs to understand it and be a party to the discussion. And finally, not in the report, but I will send you a link to a presentation that I gave to the Connecticut Legislature Task Force on Preserving the Shoreline, which I think will clarify a number of issues that were touched upon today in the presentation. 2 most important ones being the issue of Route 146 and the state's capacity to fund such projects. And secondly, the issue of funding in general. I hope that George is correct that there will be significant funding available for these projects, but I would caution you that over the long term, we are going to find that we have far many more needs than there will likely be funding at any level. And some of the comments to me in the Q&A from people more authoritative than I think will underscore that issue. You need to be aware of that going forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sid.
Thanks, Sid.
I think we, went over that a little bit about, getting people to the public hearing. I mean, that's the first
Well, the
step.
public hearing will definitely be publicized, but I agree with you.
Yeah,
right.
It would be helpful if the meetings, some of those, at least some of them or something, would have presentations. Because my biggest thing is, it just like with the hazard mitigation, I still hear from people to this day about it, that yes, they can look at certain things, but I think part of our job is to communicate to people, and that's one way of doing it.
As I indicated, it's got a lot of moving parts. You can't absorb them in one sitting.
Yeah.
That's where a progression of hearings to the public would have been helpful in bringing them along.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? To adjourn.
So moved.
Second, oh.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I didn't want to do anything